I am so peeved right now. Welcome to Tabletop Shop.
Hello and welcome back to hello and welcome back to the Tabletop Shop podcast. Today on the episode, we're talking about one of the only Rawr rights in existence. And then after that, Cody and I are going to be going over some of our pet peeves within the board gaming world. I am one of your co-hosts, Nate Clark, and as always, seated halfway across the country from me is your other co-host, Mr. Cody Pennington.
That's me, yo.
That's
How you
Cody.
doing, dude?
I appreciated your balloon shop intro, Cody. That was
Hey, thanks, man.
top tier.
Have you seen every balloon shop video? There's
I
not
actu-
very many.
What do you mean there's not very many? They have like almost 100 videos.
Is it that much? I was
think
thinking
so,
like
man.
40 or something, which I guess is a decent amount, but compared to like channels with 200 skits out there.
Well, Balloon Shop only ran for a few years, I think. And then they kind of stopped doing stuff. And then Olin Rogers went off and did his own thing. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
This is a board game podcast. Cody,
Yeah, dude.
do you want your intro question?
Yes, please.
Okay. This one was just something that came to mind once. It's just a thought that came to mind. I don't know if there's much to talk about here. I haven't thought about what I think about this. I'll just throw it out there and we'll see what happens. All right.
Okay.
Cody, should expansions always allow you to score more points? If an expansion is introduced to a game and there aren't more ways to score more points, is that a failed expansion?
That's an excellent question, dude. Of course, if we're just talking about Euros, that's applicable, but some games just have an end game condition. In which
Okay.
case, would they have expansions?
Oh, yeah, for sure. What do you mean would they have expansions? I mean,
I
yeah,
guess they would.
definitely.
Like, can you make an expansion for chess?
Okay, I think you're thinking a little too... Like, you can still think about modern board games here, Cody.
Sure.
Anything with elimination.
Oh, okay, yeah. Duh.
Splendor Duel, for example. There's no points in that. You can make an expansion for that, right?
Well, there is point in Splendor Duel. I mean,
But
there's
it's
end game conditions, but there's also points.
I guess so. I'm just thinking that it's an end condition, or it's a win
Yeah.
condition game.
Okay.
Um,
Well, my point is invalid. I'll accept that.
I think an exception can be made where you have a game that's kind of broken and needs... Oh, well, actually, Civilization: A New Dawn is a good example of this because there are no points in that game. You're competing towards goals, and whoever completes 4, I think, of the goals first wins. That had what I would call a necessary expansion because the base game was a bit broken in some ways, and so the expansion fixed those issues, added in more stuff, made the game good to excellent, in my opinion, and that game has no points whatsoever. So
Maybe I'm not feeling particularly creative today because, as you mentioned, I may actually be getting sick right now. That's why I'm so stuffy nose and stuff.
well,
So that being said, I can't really imagine a way that you could add an expansion to a point-based game and not get more points out of it. So I'm going to kind of just go with that. But here's the thing. If this isn't too exclusionary of other ideas, if you add an expansion, usually you're adding more ways to do things, right? More options. And that kind of means it's going to add new ways to be efficient, new ways to work better and get more points ultimately. So if you add an expansion where it'd be better for you just to not use any of the things in the expansion to get more points, then yeah, you kind of failed with your expansion there.
yeah, I guess so. Well, how about this? No, I guess that's kind of the same question. I was going to ask if an expansion... Well, how about this? Should you always be able to get a higher score if you're using an expansion? And I think to that, I would say yes.
I don't know if that's directly the goal when people come out with expansions like this. I feel like that's more just the end product because you're trying to add more opportunities for
Right.
people. And
Right.
as a result, you get more points out of it if
Now,
you did it right.
If it makes the game also longer, then is it really worth it? But Okay, that could be a whole board banter at some point. It seems like.
Hey.
Well, Cody said since you're not feeling particularly creative, you probably have an already pre-written list of new games you've learned since the last time you recorded, if there's anything on that list.
Dude, that's how I do it every time.
Well, that should be a cinch then, Cody.
Yeah, all right. I've got 2 new games. I'm excited about both of them. One I played on Christmas. The other I played, it's like the day after Christmas or something.
Is this directly relevant to the games or?
It's well, I guess not, but
Okay.
Thanks, dude.
Anecdotal.
For shutting me down. No, the first one, I mean, it's just kind of how I remember them at this point. They're like Christmas games. It's like Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion. I kind of remember that as a Christmas game last year because that's right around, well, maybe it was the year before.
Yeah,
whatever,
2 years
when I
ago,
was
I
playing
think.
it. Yeah. So Acropolis is a play that I got. It was one of the games I received for Christmas and immediately pulled it out. I didn't have, I guess, like super high expectations for Acropolis just because it's a tile placement city building game and it didn't seem super interesting. But the reason I put it like on a list for possible gifts for other people to get is just really well reviewed by other people. Like the Dice Tower spoke well of it.
Is it Katala?
I don't think I recognized the names on it. Let me look this up.
What am I thinking? Oh, maybe
Acropolis.
Micropolis, I think is Bruno Katala.
And then what's the ant one?
That's Micropolis, yeah.
That's okay.
That might be
one.
Bowser also. Is it Bowser? No, I don't know, man. I don't know.
Acropolis is Jules Massaud, so probably another Frenchman.
That's definitely French, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All these French people putting out good games.
Is it pretty light?
What?
Is Acropolis pretty light?
It is pretty light. It's just a bunch of tiles and some cubes, and that's basically, that's literally all it is. Other than there's of course a rule book in there. Huh? Sorry that I have to disclaim that. But yeah, I was pleasantly surprised. It's tile placement and it's city building. And so if you put those two things together, like this has been done a lot of times, usually it's not particularly interesting. I'm thinking of like Between Two Cities. That was kind of boring. I played a Glasgow and that was also kind of boring, although I'm keeping it. I want to try it again. So
you never will.
No, it's on the shelf of need to play again games, and we try to go through those before we go through other games.
Right next to Beer and Bread.
I already played that a second time.
Okay.
Yeah, I texted you about this.
Okay.
Maybe I can talk about this here too. We're spending way too long in this. Stop interrupting me, Nate. The difference with this is you can stack tiles on top of other tiles. And in order to do that, like all the tiles are little triple hexes, so kind of a little triangle shape. So you can put those together in their own little platform. And then if you've created a space consisting of at least 2 tiles, so you can't just stack the same tile like on top of its own shape over and over and over again, because then you could, by the end of the game, have like a 20 height tile, and that's stupid. So you kind of have to build this sort of in a pyramidical structure. But what that means is anything that you cover, you won't score. So buildings that you cover on the lower ends, like they're just kind of giving you a leg up to get other buildings that are scoring higher. And there are some hexes that you want to cover that when you cover them, they give you resources. So obviously those are the ones you want to put in the bottom. But again, it's just playing it. I just wasn't expecting how much fun it was going to be. It was just that simple mechanic of cover other things to get other things higher, created literally new levels of puzzle that you had to solve. And it was quite fun. I recommend it.
Cool.
Yeah.
3D tile placement.
Basically, yeah. And then Carnegie, if I spoke well of Acropolis, I got to speak well of Carnegie, dude. I just learned about this game recently-ish and just added it to my list. And then lo and behold, you got it for me for Christmas. So had you heard of this game before you saw it on my list?
Yeah, I think it might have shown up on a Dice Tower list, and I'm sure Wendy and Chris did a review of it because it's definitely their kind of game.
Yeah. I mean, just wow. Just wow, dude. Let me tell you, I dropped this in at my Space 11 on my top 100 games.
After
I'm
one
very excited
one
to
play.
play it again. After one play. Yeah, it was split over 2 days because, of course, Kiers and I will start a long game and then we just don't have time to finish it, so we'll finish it over 2. So I didn't place it until we'd officially finished it. But when I finished it, I was like, yeah. So what this game is it's sort of like there's like three different things going on in the game. So you have the map of the US that sort of functions like a ticket to ride thing where you're trying to connect different major cities and you get points, but it's a little more complicated than that. So kind of any city you can go on is either going to give you points or some sort of immediate reward. And then depending on your connections at the end of the game, you get more points. And that itself is multi-layered for how you're trying to get that. Then you have your own little personal board that you're building. So you have like a 4x4 or 5x4 grid that's supposed to represent your company, and you can put different departments down inside this company. Those departments are basically personal worker spaces. So it's sort of a Tableau engine builder where you're building up your own company, creating new spaces where you can put your workers, and then you're deploying those workers in all sorts of different ways. And then the third aspect of the game is sort of the game timer itself. There's this grid, this 4x5 little grid thing. How do I describe this in a way that doesn't sound lame, because it's so much cooler? It's not just a grid. Basically, imagine 4 rows, and those rows represent the 4 types of actions you can take throughout the game. In each row are 5 randomized spaces that
sounds like
relate.
a grid.
Yeah, well, those spaces relate to areas on the US map. So when it's someone's turn, they select which row they want to use, which will indicate everybody takes that type of action and only that type of action. But then whatever the next available space is on that row, that territory gets activated. So it's like this dual planning thing you're trying to do. But you can be mean with this. So let's say, since you have 4 rows of 5, every time you take one of the actions, it advances. So you can basically only take each type of action like 5 times throughout the game. So you want to maximize when you take that action. So you can watch and wait for the other player to be like in a really poor position to activate, say, action 2. And then you go ahead and activate action 2. So it's good for you, and the other person gets like nothing out of it. So it's almost like hate drafting in a way. But it's, yeah. You kind of just have to look it up and see what it looks like, but it's a very clever use of game timing and action selection for everybody.
So it's hate action selecting.
Kinda. Yeah, the game itself even says, like, on your turn, you may not necessarily want to find the strongest action for you. You may want to look and see which action will give other players nothing, even if it gives you a little bit of something. So then you can take that and hurt the other player. It's like, wow.
Another thing I like to hear is that you have a player board with personal worker space options. I like that. I want to see that in games more. Dinosaur Island did that, and I want to see that more, because it's a portion of a game that's just stress-free worker placement, maximize, do whatever, and nobody interferes with you. Generally, I like interference. I like that in worker placement games, but it would be nice to see people kind of run with this idea of a personal worker placement board as part of a game more often.
Yeah, and it's weird since you take the competitive worker placement out of it by it just being a personal board. The way you're messing with the other players by that whole action selection system, so it works out. Cool. How about you? What you got?
I have more games to talk about, but I'm pretty sure it'll take less time. So
okay.
First time I played is Bang, the dice game specifically. I've played Bang, the card game. Obviously, thematically, they're very similar, but this is dice based. The card game is actually pretty strategic. It's social deduction, player elimination kind of mafia style game. The card game is pretty strategic. However, it's not super intuitive. It takes a game or two to really figure out how it works. So what they did with the dice game is they made it more palatable, but in doing so, they made it less strategic. It's more lucky. It's dice, right? So actually, after one play, I was pretty disappointed. It felt pretty lucky. It felt like even halfway through the game, I didn't really know who people were still, because it's hidden roles. But then we played again with the Undead or Alive expansion. And it was a totally different experience. It adds in different dice. It adds in different mechanisms. It adds in like 3 different stacks of special cards. There's even the possibility of the people that are killed off early in the game to come back as a zombie army and fight everybody. So it's actually a pretty radical expansion. It made the game way better. Like after playing the base game once, I was like, yeah, I don't want to play this again. After playing it with that expansion, I was like, okay, I do want to play this again now. Like it was, an excellent expansion just due to kind of how dull the base game was. And I was surprised because Bang the Dice game, when it came out anyways, which was, to be fair, a little while ago, was really popular, I think. Like, really popular. And it's just like, it's way too lucky. So, definitely would recommend it with that expansion though, only. So
Is this the one that comes in the bullet?
no, that's Bang something else. Maybe it's a version of Bang the card game. I'm not sure, but it's another
okay.
Bang something. Yeah.
I have played the original Bang with you some years ago.
Wow, that must have been a long time ago.
I don't really remember it like at all.
Yeah.
So.
Also played Concept. This is a party game where, in a way, it's pretty standard. You have two teams, and each round, somebody on one team draws a card, picks a word on the card. But then what you do to try and get your team to guess the card is there's a board with a ton of different just random pictures. Some of them are more specific things. Some of them are much more general things like gender or maybe an occupation or food. Some of them are very general things like a circle, a triangle, an arrow pointing this way, two arrows pointing together, and then you have colors. So you have all these different random pictures. And basically all you do is you place cubes on the board to signify which pictures contribute to this word, and people start throwing out guesses, trying to guess. But you can get creative with it. You know, you can put multiple cubes on the same thing to try and indicate something. You can move a cube back and forth in between two things, or directly from one to the other, kind of over and over again. You know, you can get really creative. You just can't talk or act out anything. You just have these cubes and you have these pictures, and you're trying to get people to guess words. And honestly, it was really fun. Surprisingly fun, I would say. Like when he busted the board out, it looked, I don't know how old the game is, but it didn't look that great. You know, it looked kind of dated already. But I don't know. It kind of came through. It was a lot of fun. Yeah.
This kind of sounds like a Mysterium-y or Codenames-y.
Yes, but yeah, actually, it's very Codenames-y, I would say. It's like the picture version, but not really, because that would be Codenames Pictures. But you know,
nice try.
The next one was Werewords. This was a real miss for me. It's basically Werewolf, the card game, but it's app-driven and it's 20 questions based, kind of. Did not work for me at all. Like, that's all I'm going to say about it. I don't recommend it.
Okay.
Also played
Good
Reviving Kathmandu. This is a really recent Kickstarter, actually. Pretty simple. Actually, so it has set collection in it. You're drafting cards, collecting sets. The set collection is a lot like the set collection in Four Gardens. There's 4 different types of sets you can collect, and one has 1 piece to it, one has 2 pieces, one has 3 pieces, one has 4 pieces, like cards. But the cards also have to be placed in a specific order. So like this is one card might be specifically the 3rd tier of that set, you know? And so you have to collect one of each tier for each set. So it's a very specific, like you're collecting very specific cards, making sets. Basically you're building like stupas and temples and stuff like that, Buddhas. The card drafting is unique. Basically there's like kind of a little grid of cards, and there's little spaces all around where you can place a secret bid. So you have coins numbered 1 through 5, kind of Nidavellir style, actually. You place one hidden on one spot, and then once everybody's placed all of their things, you all flip them over, and then use that to determine who gets what cards, basically. And it's kind of this grid system. It felt kind of like a blend between...
Grids are dumb.
Shut
know what
I'm saying? It felt kind of like a cross between Furnace bidding and Nidavellir bidding. It just wasn't that interesting, surprisingly. And then again, the set collection also kind of felt just a little bit dull. So in general, it seemed like good ideas, but in the long run, I don't know. I just didn't feel like it was incredibly fun compared to something like Furnace, you know? So, yeah. Last but not least, then we'll be done with the first 20 minutes of our podcast.
Yeah, come on, dude.
Quite simply an expansion for Lorenzo Il Magnifico. Played Houses of Renaissance. Absolutely made the game better. Like this, to me, this is just apparently the list of like expansions that made games better. Wow. Lorenzo was a good game. I think what I said about it was that it was a little bit simpler than I expected. Houses of Renaissance completely transformed that for me. It adds in so many new things. Loved it. I won't say any more because we're getting too long, but I highly recommend that expansion. So, game of the week, Cody. Let's go.
All right, our game of the week is a game that Nate has only played once, I think. right?
Yeah,
Eh?
actually. I think I wanted to
Okay.
play it a second time and never got to.
Okay. But you feel confident enough to drop
Yeah.
some glory and some hate on this game.
Yeah.
One or the other, maybe both. Dinosaur Island, Rawr and Right.
Okay, well that's that. Let's talk about that already, Cody. Rawr.
Okay, what do you want to talk about? Yeah, come on. It's a play. It's the play of the in right. You've got rolling rights, you got flipping rights, now you've got Rawr and Rights.
It's Rawr.
Rawr?
Rawr. Disagree to agree.
It would be ROAR if it was Roar and Right. This is RAWR. You pronounce AW as ah, not O.
Yeah, but it's a play on like a dinosaur saying roar, isn't it?
Well, some dinosaurs say rar.
I don't think so, Cody. I don't think they
I think
do.
so. You know what?
This is a con. This is the first on my cons list now. Is your pronunciation of the word roar?
Pronounce rar. You can't hear this, but I'm going to
okay.
play this YouTube video.
No, they're always British. It doesn't count.
He said raw.
Yeah, because he's British, Cody.
Raw. No, his name's Julian. I don't know. Anyway,
what were you saying?
Rawr and Right, Dinosaur Island. Do you want to keep talking about this?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Is this the hill?
Did I interrupt your introduction, Cody?
Yeah, dude.
Oh wow, my bad.
Do you know how that makes me feel? So Dinosaur Island, Rawr and Right. This would be the 4th installment in the Dinosaur Island family. I'm sure Duelosaur Island was out at this point. What year is Dinosaur Island, Rawr and Right?
That one's the most recent. I'm almost 100% certain.
Oh, but then there's Dinosaur World.
No, I think that was still older.
That's 2021.
I think this is 22.
Rawr and Right is also 21. So what came out first? Did they come out at the same time?
I'm still pretty sure this one's the newest, but not worth investigating, I don't think.
So the 3.5th installment in the Dinosaur Island
series.
Did you say
Fife?
Yeah.
Isn't that like what a little shepherd boy plays? Plays a fife?
I don't know, dude.
Pretty sure fifth is the word.
Are we just going to keep doing this?
All right, you know what? I will mute my mic, okay?
Okay. It's the Rawr and Right, the roll and right version of Dinosaur Island. That's what it is. Nate, what do you like about the game?
Yeah, we can just
talk about it.
We can just do
more,
that, actually.
You've got some pages, you've got some pads, two pages per game per person. But then there's also a little middle board, and you have some cards you flip out. So you have some randomized specialists and some randomized buildings that you can build. Beyond that, there's your dice, and that's all the components of the game. It's all you need. Then it's Dinosaur Island.
Your idea of an overview is just reading the components list from the rule book.
Well, at this point,
there's some dice.
I mean, I don't know, dude. Everything's on a piece of paper. If I just say there's some paper, then that basically encompasses everything that's in the game.
I'll go first.
Okay.
What I like, one of the biggest things I like is that there's so many different things going on. And this is reminiscent of the base game. It's reminiscent of Dinosaur Island, that there's different phases, and each phase is so different. So first you're drafting dice, and then you're placing dice, and then you're like buying stuff and drawing stuff on your mat, you know? There's a lot of different things going on, especially for a little roll and write. There's a lot of different things going on, and I love that variety. It keeps it interesting because there's so many different factors that affect each other, right? You've got the randomness of the dice. You've got the decision-making of dice placement, you and the other people. And then you've got the cards that come out that you can purchase. And, it's all these different things that add so much variety. I think it's amazing. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah, part of the reason I didn't get too much into it over the description of the game or the overview is because a lot of the things I like about it are descriptive. So I think it feels a lot like Dinosaur Island. I think it encompasses that same idea of you're collecting your DNA, you have places to store that DNA, you're spending the DNA to create different types of dinosaurs, and you have to fit them in your park somewhere. There's the whole dice drafting system. And then kind of the different phases, like you were saying, where you go through building everything, you do a couple turns of that, and then this is what's a little bit unique to the Rawr and Right, is that you have the run your park phase. It's basically equivalent to like an end of round function for Dinosaur Island, but this happens every 2 turns instead, so there's a little bit more planning and intentionality that comes into it.
Would you call it an engine builder?
Yeah, I would.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, because you're acquiring different resources, ways to use the resources, different assets that you can use to make your game better. So for sure.
One thing I already kind of mentioned, but I'll hone in on it a little bit more, is specifically the player interaction in this is really like the perfect level, I think. So the most fragile part of the game, I guess, is what you're doing on your personal mats. That part isn't really affected too much by other people. The part that is affected is the dice drafting and the dice placement. And I think the interaction with other players is that indirect player interaction of drafting and then placing dice on different actions, and even how your dice can interact with other people's dice on that dice placement area. I think I really think it hits the sweet spot of player interaction for me.
Yeah, it is pretty cool how it works like that. This is kind of a later point for me, but basically multi-use dice is what you get out of this.
Mm-hmm.
So for one, you draft the dice for yourself. Then there's a player interaction component on top of that where whichever die is remaining, everybody gets to activate that. Which, fun fact, Three Sisters does the same thing. So that's another reason you need to play Three Sisters if you liked this.
Yeah, I do need to look into it. But I also really like that too. That remaining die affects everybody is phenomenal.
Yeah. Because then you can leave it up to you at that point. Like if you're the last player to pick, you can pick one for yourself. You know you're going to get the effects of both dice. So which one do you want only you to be able to get?
But
that's
then
just kind of a fun
also
choice.
You have the threat dots too, right?
Yeah.
So if like the last 3 dice are a 1 threat, a 1 threat, and a 3 threat, it's like, well, as the second to last player, I can take the 1 threat, and then I put the last player in a difficult position of like I can kind of push off that decision to them instead of having to deal. I can still take what I want, you know. So it's fun.
Which is 100% Dinosaur Island. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
And I feel like they did that well. I'll just keep going on the dice since I like the dice. Multi-use there, and then you're placing your dice after that point. After you've drafted them, whichever dice you have, you're using as sort of a second type of worker to go on a central action board. And then it's weird. I can't remember exactly how it works, but it's if you're covering a die that has some pips on it, there's some sort of penalty for you. I forget exactly what it is, whether it's like you have to pay money.
Yeah,
It'd be weird though because you don't store money. You immediately pay, or you immediately use money on your board whenever you get it. So I don't remember how it works.
I think you absorb threat, don't you?
Oh, maybe that's it. You might be right. But there's some strategy in that too, because if you think you're going to go on a space that someone else may want to go on a later turn, you might try to put a higher pip die there,
right,
so that the person who takes it gets a penalty. So yeah, it's clever. And my last thing with the dice is I just like that you use all the dice every game. That was something that always annoyed me about Dinosaur Island and some other roll and write type games or just dice games, is when you have these unique dice that are all a little bit different, but you only play with like 2 per player plus 1 or something. It's like I feel a little bit cheated. Like, well, what if I want to play with some of those other dice? I know it can make the game a little bit different each time.
How does that work in Dinosaur Island? Like the dice that are left out, is it completely random, or are they dice, or is it like here's the 4 and 5 player dice, leave those out?
No, I think it's each round you just throw all the dice in the bag and then you pull out a certain number. So you're still only using a certain number of dice per player per round, but that pool randomizes every round.
Isn't that good though? Like it's kind of like if you looked at the Arc Nova deck and you're like, man, really sucks that we don't go through the whole deck in a game. It's like, no, that's what's amazing. It's that you only go through 30% of the deck in a game. Look how many cards you didn't even touch. So every game is going to be so different, right?
Ish. It feels different for me because the pool is so small. It's like only a difference of like a couple other things to throw in there.
Uh-huh.
I don't know. It's just a little thing.
All right.
But I like that.
Last for me, and I'm going to try not to compare this too much to Dinosaur Island. That could even be a versus in the future, potentially.
Yeah, it's not like this is a derivative of the original game.
Well, but you have to be able to, judge the game fairly in a vacuum, right?
That's true.
You could say the same thing for Expeditions. It's like you can't let the presence of Scythe affect your opinion of how what the game actually is in and of itself. That being said, I'll say 2 things here. No, I'll save one thing for the end. I'll say one thing here. Just thinking about Dinosaur Island, the setup in this is so much better.
Dude, yes.
So much better. And that for me
So
is
much.
100% going on the pro list because that's a winner for me.
100% yes. 110% yes. I like Dinosaur Island, but the reason I never want to play it is I don't want to spend 2 hours sorting all the tiles, setting up the game, pulling out the 25 different sorting bags. This, you just pull out your pages, you shuffle some cards, deal them out, and you're good to go. I love that.
Yep.
Yeah, I like that a lot is packed into a small space too. Like this is fairly heavy. I wouldn't call it a heavy game, but it's fairly heavy for a roll and write as far as I've played blank and writes. You know. It's fun. It's good. Did you have any other likes? Because I had a couple other.
No, that was it for me. So go ahead.
Oh, okay. I think it looks really good for a roll and write, or for a blank and write. Because most of them that I've played, I don't know. It feels kind of ugly. It feels kind of lacking. Like there's some like cartographers. You kind of have the nice looking cards, but beyond that, you're kind of just scribbling and scratching over your little piece of paper. And granted, you do some of that in Rawr and write. But the color scheme looks nice. You have a little central board that looks nice, all the cards. It just overall has a superior aesthetic to most blank and writes that I've played. So that's cool. And finally, I like the assigning of coins or roads that you acquire immediately. It's a clever way to use a currency in the game where you can't just collect currency, save it toward the end of the round or for the next round, and then spend it. As soon as you get like 2 coins, you spend it right away towards some cost. And there's some penalty with that. If you start assigning money towards a cost, like maybe you have a 5 cost card that you're working towards and you spend the first 2, and then later you realize, oh, I don't want this at all. You've already spent 2 coins towards it, so you can't go back. But the game has some grace in that you can store some coins when you acquire them. You can do that like up to 5 times. And I just think it's another clever way to make a player make a decision in the moment. And that's cool. And those are my likes.
Maybe they thought the game would be too easy. I don't know. If you didn't have to dedicate your coins to stuff. I don't know.
I kind of wonder if it was just a way to solve like that everything is being played out on a piece of paper. We don't want to incorporate punch out coins because now it's becoming more board game and less a roll and write.
I mean, you could do what you do in cartographers where you fill them in when you acquire them and then you put an X over it or whatever when you spend them.
I don't recall that in cartographers.
Yeah, like you also accrue coins in cartographers, which are basically
they're just points though. It's not like you're spending them for stuff.
Until you get the expansion.
Okay. Now you figured it out. All right. I haven't played the expansion, so.
Is that it for pros or?
Yeah. What do you dislike about it?
Well, it's funny because my first con is actually I think the game. Maybe it's not a con so much as it is somewhere in the middle. I don't think the game looks as good as it could.
Really?
I think the player mats are a little too busy. Now, in a way, it's like, okay, well, there's a lot going on in the game, right? Which is actually a good thing. And so it's like, well, yeah, okay, they do end up looking busy, maybe for that reason, right? And so maybe that's excusable. The drawing part is really ugly, though. Like, that's bad. Really bad. Like, I remember, I think, even watching like a video of this before you even had it. Watching somebody kind of talk how the game works and drawing stuff, and I was like, it just looks so ugly. It just looks so terrible, you know? And now the other components of the game look fine, you know? They're very much like Dinosaur Island, you know? They have that same vibe, but some of the player mat stuff that I'm kind of mentioning here throws me off a bit. So I guess it's somewhere in the middle, pro-con-ish.
The thing is, though, like any blank and write you run into where you have to start drawing something, like it's just going to come down to the skill of the player. And if you're bad artists like we are, then yeah, it's just going to look like trash.
Yeah, or the amount of time that you, I guess, invest into making it look nice.
On a quick side note, I love how whenever you pull up like cartographers or Rawr and Write on BGG, the displayed pictures are always someone who has like a master's degree in like calligraphy and art or something, and their board just looks beautiful. And then you play your own game and like, here are my stick figures and boxes.
You know, it doesn't matter so much for this game. For cartographers, an absolute must is colored pencils because you have different colored like terrain types, and you're supposed to just like mark that using a symbol for the terrain type, which is so dumb. Like, just throw some colored pencils in the box, please. So like, I don't think we ever played without colored pencils, or maybe we played once and we're like, okay, we need colors, because trying to like, anyways, that's a different game. But
sure.
Yeah. What you got?
I'll go last. So do you have any other dislikes?
Oh, I've got a couple more. So
Yeah, just go through them. Do it.
Again, with the drawing area, I thought that as a spatial puzzle was not that engaging because I didn't feel like space was really limited. It's a really big area, so you have a lot of room to work with, and you're kind of chasing the exits, right? Because because it's Jurassic Park, so you're always trying to find an exit.
Yeah.
But it didn't feel like a very interesting puzzle, and maybe again I'm comparing this to Cartographers in my head, where it's like it's a very interesting puzzle. All the buildings play off each other in very interesting ways, whereas Dinosaur Island, it's just like draw a square, add a road, try and get to an exit. It just didn't feel that engaging to me.
Very well.
Lastly is a two-pronged thing. I think the game is in some ways a little too punishing. Now, this is in regards to the spatial aspect. If you get something maybe one row off or one column off, it can totally screw up your whole thing, and you can't change the positions of buildings. And then also with the dedicating coins things, I think can be pretty punishing. It's like you really need to think far ahead. You need to think about the buildings you're going to build in the future. You need to think about the purchases you want to make multiple turns in advance. And then you can't really pivot. Like once you kind of set those plans in stone, it's like, okay, you have to pursue that now, Now, again, I've only played this once. Maybe it's like, well, yeah, you played it once. It was your first game. You need to play it a few more times and get the hang of it. But to me, first play, it really felt punishing in that regard.
Yeah, I think that's an aspect that I don't mind about it. I just like the challenge with it. There's other games, like when we were talking about Cave versus Cave last time, and I feel like that's a bit more punishing, where you can end up at the end of the game with resources that you just can't do anything with, that otherwise would have been a difference of like 25% of your score.
Right. Yeah.
So this feels a little bit tamer to me, but yeah. Are those all your dislikes?
That's it for me.
All right, I'm going to hit you up with my one dislike, which is the fact that I don't really have any dislikes.
What I mean by this this is interesting. So you dislike the fact that you can't pinpoint anything you don't like.
Yeah, well, sort of. It's more that despite all the good things I had to say about it, and the fact that I can't think of any specific thing that like I actively dislike about the game, all that to be said, it's like a 7.5 out of 10 for me. Maybe I'll bump this to an 8 at some point, but it just seems odd that if I have all this good stuff to say about it and no dislikes, it just seems strange that I'm not really willing to put it any higher than that. So it's like a solidly, mediocrely solid, decent game.
Well,
I don't have anything bad to say about it, but it's just not any higher.
Here's the explanation, Cody. The game just doesn't vibe with you. Like, I think I had the same, and I think we talked about Wingspan a while ago, and I think that was the conclusion I came to Wingspan. It's like, here's my list of all the things the game does well. My list of negatives is like, I just don't like it that much. I don't have a better explanation. It's just not my kind of game, And I still feel like that's how I feel about Wingspan. It's like, it is really a very, very, very well-designed game. I just don't have that much fun with it, That's just how it is sometimes.
Yeah, I guess so.
You just have to accept that, Cody.
I know. Well, I was just thinking it'd be fun to do a top 3 or top 5 list with games like this at some point. Games that we don't really have anything negative to say about, but just aren't any higher than like an 8.
Yeah, that could be fun.
So, yeah.
In conclusion for me on this was the other point I wanted to make earlier. It 100% is a Dinosaur Island killer. And I know you disagree with me on this point. At least you did in the past when we've talked about this. To me, I get the same or at least near enough to the same experience, because I really feel like it does deliver very, very similarly to Dinosaur Island, that if I had the option to own only one of these, there's no question. And a big part of that is because the setup and takedown of Dinosaur Island is just absolutely brutal. It's just not worth it. The game is fun, but it's not that fun, right? This game is that fun, and there isn't all this labor involved in playing the game. And I feel like I really kind of get a similar experience.
Did I ever talk about Dinosaur World? I finally played a full game of it recently. I wonder if I forgot to list it under games I played.
Yeah, I think our most recent status update was like you played half a game and that was it. So.
Okay, well, this is totally out of sequence then. Let me throw in there with games I've been playing is I finally recently played a full game of Dinosaur World. And I think I still like Dinosaur Island a little bit better. Dinosaur World fixed some things, but it's like they took Dinosaur Island and like upped the weight like a whole level.
That's
in
not
a way
bad.
that it didn't. Well, it didn't really need to though. It's almost like too complicated.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like over. Would you call that not over engineered, but it's like almost bloat?
Kinda. Where there's like, for every decision you'd have to make in Dinosaur Island, it feels like there's 2 or 3 you have to make in Dinosaur World, where it starts moving away from the charm of Dinosaur Island and into like a heavier Euro.
Okay.
And from what I've seen, it seems like Dinosaur World hasn't performed super great. And I wonder if lots of people are kind of running into the same conclusion.
Probably because people weren't expecting that out of it, right? I mean, you probably weren't either.
Yeah, I think people are expecting a sequel or sort of a renewed
Right.
experience.
Right.
And they sort of did that, but they made it too convoluted. That's probably the issue.
So, are you saying you also disagree with me on my opinion of Rawr, right?
I feel like I'm neutral. I'm not trying to be Switzerland here. But the problem, I think, is I respect Dinosaur Island, but I already don't like mega enjoy it. It's still ranked pretty high in my top 100, but it's balanced enough to where I don't want to go through all the effort of setting it up. So because of that, I'd rather play Rawr and Right, and in that way, it's a Dinosaur Island killer for me. But if Dinosaur Island appeared on the table, set up, and it was ready to go, I'd rather play that. Know what I mean?
Yeah, but the digital version wouldn't remedy that, because I think the fun of Dinosaur Island is your player mat and putting your dinos in and building the cages and pulling out the visitors from the bag. And so a digital version would remedy the issues with the game, but it would cause other issues. So
I also don't like the plastic in the Dinosaur Island
so we've had that
series.
conversation. We don't
Just
need to do it
just do
again,
wood. Just do wood.
Yeah. Okay, that's it. That was a good discussion, man. We really had a lot to say about that game.
Yeah, I feel like we're gonna have a few more things to say in our banter.
That's a terrible transition, Cody. That is just an awful.
Come on, dude. What else you want?
I feel like we're gonna talk more in the next segment. Yeah,
what I meant is that we'll have things that are possibly controversial, but we're definitely going to have some discussions out of, or maybe some silent nodding of the heads, which will just come across as
doesn't work well
blank.
in an audio format. Yeah.
No, it doesn't. Yeah.
Okay, so we're doing our top 5 pet peeves within the board gaming world. So this could be involving the habits of other players. It could be involving something that happens in games, something about the game. Just, we kind of said no rules, just anything that would fit into the pet peeve category for you regarding board games.
And as we established, outside of the range of the mic, this is not an exclusive, like, perfect list. It's not saying that number 1 is our ultimate number 1 pet peeve. We more just kind of went about this as, let's pick some things that come to mind, and then we'll rank them. But we could definitely do follow-ups to this with additional 5 pet peeves. Pet peeves? Pet peeves.
That being said, like, that is how we did it. I will say I still ranked mine by how egregious the offense is. So,
okay.
like, my number 1 bugs me more than my number 5. Like, that just seemed like the logical way to sort it, right?
I don't know if I'd say mine are ranked by universal egregiousness. They're more just, how much they personally affect me.
By the way, Universal Egregiousness was a band I was in high school. Okay. I can go ahead and start.
The saxophone that you played for like a year?
Absolutely, man. Everybody loves saxophone.
Yeah, all right.
Okay. So my number 5, my first one here, it's a small one. All right, this one's a bit petty, I admit. Okay. But I like to have all cards facing. I think this is from Dominion. This was ingrained in me in Dominion. Dominion's a deck builder where you're cycling through your hand a lot. And when I draw a hand of 5 cards, I want them all to be oriented the same way, right? I don't want to be flipping cards around. And so I'd always discard all my cards the same way, shuffle them up without mixing them around. And then when I drew my hand, they were all facing. I didn't have to reorient anything. So my pet peeve here is people that discard cards not the way that I've already started the discard pile. This is a very petty one, okay? It's very petty, and it doesn't bug me that much. It's my number 5. But sometimes I'll find myself like going through the discard pile when I'm waiting on somebody else's turn and like sorting all of them the same direction. It's petty, but it's a small thing. And like I said, I think it's ingrained in me from Dominion, where it's like I don't want to be constantly changing the cards in my hand so I can read them all. It's like I'll just discard them all the same way, and then I don't have to worry about it. Yeah.
I didn't think of that aspect, but I feel you a little bit there.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Thanks.
My number 5 is also probably equally as petty because it's a little bit self-serving. Maybe I guess all of these are kind of self-serving,
they
right?
are.
I mean, that's what a pet peeve is, right? Out of print games. I don't like having games on my list that aren't super old that I just want to find and I really want to play, or maybe it's an expansion and they're just not available anywhere. It's like I don't want to pay twice the amount I would pay on eBay to get this game, or try to find it locally and have to meet up somewhere and spend a week trying to find one. It's just nah. I want all games that I want to just be in print. Is that too much to ask?
Well, then I guess you just need to change your criteria for the games you want, Cody. You just can't allow yourself to want games that aren't as popular anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my pre-stipulation for any game that I want is I only want games that are in stock.
Well, you'll just have to be an exclusive member of Cult of the New, and then you'll never have to worry about it.
It's so sad.
Yeah.
So sad.
Okay, my number 4, also a very small thing. Actually, this one probably could have even been my number 5, but people who enforce things in a game that are not necessary. I'm talking about really small things like putting my pieces on the right spot on my player board if there's a spot assigned for like resources, if it's like, put your resources on this mat. I don't want to. Maybe just because the game's telling me I don't want to. And it doesn't affect the game, but if somebody's telling me I have to, because the game says I have to, because I can't put them next to my player board, I have to put them on that spot, like, no. Also the same with like somebody who insists on passing a first player token around in a game that you really don't need to also bugs me.
Is this why you don't like Wingspan, where you're supposed to put the cubes on the board and then move them from right
Cody,
to left? And I'm like, Nate, you have to make sure you put the cube there. And you're like, no,
Cody,
I don't.
I think that is the inception of this problem. I think you like tapping your little action cube on every card. And I think I was like, I am not doing that.
I am not sorry. I am not sorry at all for honoring the game.
Do you still do that when you play it physically?
Oh, dude, it's been so long since I've played a physical game of Wingspan. I don't really remember.
Fair.
Yeah. Okay. My number 4 is just bags. Game bags in new games. And just all the issues that come with those. Oftentimes you'll have not enough. There'll be like 7 different types of pieces that you want sorted individually, and the game will give you like 4 bags. You're like, no. And then sometimes you'll get way too many. The game gives you like 27 bags and you need like 4. You're like, why do I need so many bags? Now I'm going to collect all these and
Cody,
use them for the games that don't give me enough bags.
Those games are doing a service because they're making up for the other games that don't do
Maybe
it,
they
right?
are.
They're
Maybe I should
compensating.
respect those games.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the next thing is the bags are always too big.
Yes.
Like you don't have a lot of space in these boxes, right? You need to fit things down. You don't need extra plastic. And then there's like, okay, here are your 5 colors of player pieces. And now here are 4 bags where each bag could fit all of those pieces in a single bag. They're like 8 times bigger than they need to be.
Or
just bugs me.
They send you not enough bags with the assumption that you're going to keep all the player pieces of all colors in one bag. It's like,
I know.
No. I'm not doing that.
Here's the worst example. I sent you a picture of this, and I immediately returned the game to Amazon after I got it, which is a fun aspect of buying games on Amazon. It was Kingdom Builder. Kingdom Builder has 100 plus little wooden pieces in there, and they just sent one massive bag. You're just supposed to dump everything in.
That is so funny.
You're like, yes, I see that it fits. And it fits so well that there's still 90% of space left in this massive bag, but I don't want, I could just use the box at that point.
The game,
why are you sending me a bag?
The game's like, oh, do you want a separate box for every single little, you have one box, isn't that good enough for you? Wait, Cody, here's the solution. I have a solution for you. I know your wife sold her sewing machine, so, maybe it's a little bit harder. You need to get yourself a wife who makes bags out of cloth for pieces in your games. All right?
My solution is just game trays, dude, especially the little Stonemeyer game trays.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
Yeah, those are nice.
Yeah.
Those are nice.
Okay.
That's funny.
What's your number 3?
My number 3 is it's another 2-pronged one. So it's either an expansion not fitting in the base game box, which I haven't run into this too much, but But the other side of this is an expansion not fitting with the original insert. If I have to if my options are either toss the original insert or have 2 boxes, I don't like that. That doesn't make me happy. I've had to toss some good inserts like Abyss, Champions of Midgard, Tapestry. Like, I had to toss all of them because like I want everything in one box, and it's not going to fit in one box if I don't toss the insert that you sent me with the original game. You know,
Is it painful when you have to throw away the insert?
Yes, it's painful, and you see this in some games where, like, they are anticipating expansions in their insert, and you'll see, oh, there's extra spaces for stuff that doesn't seem to make sense with the components that are in here. It's like, yeah, buy the expansion, everything will be perfect, and you won't be angry, you know?
Yeah, I hate tossing out inserts. I rarely do that.
I'm wondering...
But proceed.
Because, like I said, I haven't run into it too often where it just straight up doesn't fit in the box. Do you have any expansions for the West Kingdom games?
Just one.
Because my assumption would be, with as bad as Paladins was, like, Paladins barely fits in the box to begin with.
Oh,
There's no way.
They're all of them.
Yeah.
All of them are so full.
Yeah.
I don't remember. I've only played that once. It was recent-ish. I think I kept the expansion in the expansion box.
Well, I know for a fact with Paladins that there's no way that anything else is going to fit in that box. You couldn't fit another piece of paper in there, man.
I mean, that's kind of how Gloomhaven is. Gloomhaven, when the box is like perfectly well organized, the lid still sits like 8 inches above.
That's 100%
the lid,
true.
The rim. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Does that encompass and summarize your number 3?
Yeah.
Yeah. I do feel that. My number 3 though is a little bit different. Just as my number 4 was sort of an all-encompassing bag issue, this is punchboard issues. When you get a new game, you got to punch out the pieces. For one, I don't like the little powdery residue that comes out.
Yeah.
Kind of what I do now is I punch out most of my games on the carpet on the floor. Hopefully I just remember to vacuum it up later, but then you don't get all those just little fringy pieces left over like on your table.
Uh-huh.
What?
I'm just thinking like a carpet is just like... Just the absorb. It's like everything just disappears and goes away in the carpet. It's fine.
And you never see it again, right? Yeah. How many games can I punch out before I start noticing it, right?
Before you're an inch taller walking around your house.
Yeah. So there's that aspect. And then what I just hate is when you're trying to punch out pieces and it's like you punch out a piece and there's always one little corner tab that like doesn't let go.
Yes.
So like you go through and you push out every single piece and then you have to go around the other end. It's like a cheese grater when you're like grating cheese and then you have to like
reach your hand up the inside and like scrape out the little dangly guys.
You have to rub the inside. It's just like that. You have to pull them all out. And then worst case scenario is when the paper isn't super high quality and you end up like half ripping part of the token. Mm-hmm. It just hurts. It hurts so much because there's no going back. You can't fix that. It's done.
100%. And you know what I realized? So I just recently punched, Village Rails and Great Western Trail 2nd Edition. And wow, I think Village Rails was my first time like truly experiencing a high quality punch board. I was like, oh, like you barely touch them and they just fall out perfectly. It's like this compared to like Hadara. Like Hadara was so bad, entire parts of the piece would stay like... Remember that? Like, the pieces were so bad that, like, the stickers would come off the cardboard. Like,
yeah.
Oh.
That's probably part of what made me start hating this was Hadara.
That is such a luxury. It's such a first world problem, and it's such a luxury thing. It's like, I want nice punch boards, you know?
Yeah.
It's funny.
This, I'm just now thinking of this. It kind of fits in the same aspect, and this is maybe extra luxury, but when you get a punch board that's like for a player board or something, and like 90% of what you're punching out is the board. It's like, why did I have to do this?
Yes.
Why did you make a punch board for this? Just print the thing a little bit bigger.
Yeah, I just had that experience recently with a game where I was like, what was the point? Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, my number 2 and my number 1 could go either way. They're both awful, awful things. So my number 2 is actually expansion related again. And this one is really bad, and I genuinely cannot understand why this happens. Sometimes you buy an expansion, and it comes with more cards or it comes with more tiles that should be shuffled or mixed into another previously existing deck of cards or stack of tiles. And the backs do not exactly match. You can see the color difference
I feel you.
in the expansion compared to how should you not have whatever computer program you used? Should you have not like saved the exact color? Like what? I don't understand. Did they use a different printer? Like what is it? A different company? I can't comprehend how that happens. And it's in some games, it's really an issue. You know, it's crazy.
I noticed this with Dominion. I think you bought me that copy of Dominion like a few years ago. And in that base game, there's like an extra set of one of every single card that's in the game, I guess in case you lose one. And all those cards, they're printed, like the back is like slightly faded. I guess so you can tell apart the extras, but then they become sort of useless at that point because when you see them at the deck.
Well, okay, I'm not 100% sure. So the base Dominion, or I think any copy of Dominion, comes with an extra copy of each card as the randomizer deck. So, like, you can take...
Oh, is that what that is?
Well, kind of, because you can take one copy of every single action card and mix them all up into one big deck, and then you can flip over 10. However, like, that's how we always used it, and it makes sense. But there's also a copy of Estates, Coppers, Silvers. Like, there's also one of each of those, too, so I don't know.
Exactly. So what's the point? Yeah. You randomize which coins you're going to use in the game.
Like, oh, sorry, guys, no Coppers. You just get 3 Estates to start the game.
Nice.
Yeah.
That'd be great. Yeah, I feel you. My number two is something that does not occur very frequently at all. It's like a very low percentage of times that I've experienced this. However, when it does happen, it hurts so much that it made number 2 on this list. It's when a corner of your game box rips. And it's just there forever. It's there forever. I can recall this happening with like some of the games we had, like when I was a kid, like, you know, like I think might have happened to Stratego and Battleship. So games like that where they're just so old and not super high quality cardboard that it just kind of happens. But Gloomhaven, when I got Gloomhaven, it shipped, I think, like that.
Oh,
and the whole corner of it is just ripped. Wow. And so we had to kind of tape it together, but that's a heavy game. There's a lot of weight that's sitting in there. You don't want the corners to rip, dude.
Wait, do you mean like the box, not the lid?
The box, the bottom part.
Wow.
It sucks just as much when the lid breaks too. I guess it's
not as much because I don't want to open Gloomhaven and have one side fall out like the barn in Seven Brides for Seven Brothers and all my pieces come spilling out.
Yeah. And then this just happened with, I think it happened with Furnace, actually. And like the corner of the box is broken.
Wow.
And so that just makes me sad and it sucks. And there's no going back. You can't fix it.
Well,
it's just there.
You did have a second copy of Furnace that you gave away, but...
Well, but the thing is, we got that by the grace of Arcane Wonders by accident. And I didn't want to like keep their copy and then give away my bad copy to someone.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. My number 1 has nothing to do with the game itself.
Whoa.
Cody, the worst thing that can happen in a competitive strategy board game is to play with a person who does something that doesn't necessarily benefit them. They just do something to be nice to somebody else. Playing with people that are not competitive and will just do nice things for other people because they feel bad for them or because they don't know what to do or because somebody asks them to. I do not ever want to play games with you. Ever. You want to play cooperative games? Fine. I'm sure you're great at them. Competitive games? Stay away from my table. Because I am not, that's not a, what are you doing? Why are you playing the game? What, it's just an activity? You don't want to win? Like, what? I just cannot. We were playing a game not too long ago. And somebody was just like giving cards to it's a trading game. Somebody was just straight up giving cards to other people like, nah, I don't need anything returned. Just take this. It's like, what? Why are you playing? I don't understand. Yeah.
You know, some of us, Nate, actually just enjoy playing games for the game.
That's not a game anymore. What is that? It's just like a team building exercise? I agree that can be taken to extremes, Cody.
But
just think about Carnegie. Think about Carnegie, and Kirsten's like, "Oh, I'm gonna, shift to this, to take an action." Cody, what's the one that'll hurt you the least? What's the one that's best for you, and I'll do that action. Like, what? That would just ruin the game. You know?
We just enjoy having a good time, dude.
All right.
That's just
Cody,
how it is.
Cody, are you trying to tell me you're somebody I don't want to play games with? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
I don't know, dude. I don't know. Honestly, I'll do that for Kirsten sometimes. I mean, usually it's a place where I know I'm going to win anyway, so I'm just like,
okay.
I want you to feel
Wow,
better
that's
about
even
your own
worse.
game. So
here's some pity points.
I'm spreading the joy around is what I'm doing, dude.
No, then it becomes a game for you. It's like, ooh, how close can I get my opponent to me with me still winning?
Well, the thing is, my goal is always to set a PR for a game I'm playing.
Right.
So if I can accomplish that, and then I'm gonna win anyway, and I can let someone else have a little bit better of a time, I'll go ahead and I'll throw them that bone.
Okay.
You know, because I'm not a vindictive jerk, dude.
Listen. I'm fun to play games with. All right, but I also want to win, and I want the other person I'm playing with to also try to win. You know. So, and I have a wife who is very like. She's like, any chance where she can hate draft something or do something that she can't find what benefits her the most. So it's like, all right, let's study Nate's player board and see what hurts him the most. Like, good. Yes, I want to play a game with somebody that is actively, constantly, always trying to win, you know? And they don't throw tantrums when they lose. It's not about that. It's first and foremost about having fun, but you can...
Exactly.
No. But
exactly.
But
it's about having fun.
if the way that you have fun is by not being competitive in a competitive game, then I do not want to play games with you. All right, that's it.
All right. I see you feel very strongly about this. And I'm just going to go to my number one, which is also a bit of a rant, but not against the gamers. This is against confusing rule books. I very much dislike confusing rule books. This can appear in different ways. Sometimes they cannot be translated well. This happened in Castles of Burgundy, where there's literally some specific rules for specific tiles. I don't remember exactly which ones, but I remember that I actually had to go to Board Game Geek and find like an entry for this, where someone knew what the rules were in German, and they understood that it was not translated correctly. And if you play by the English rules, you're not playing it the way it was intended to be played, and it breaks it a little bit. So mistranslated rulebooks, that's an issue. The Neotopia rulebook was just translated really poorly. Like, you understood what they were trying to say, but the English was just very wrong.
It was like textbook Google Translate.
Yeah, basically, it was terrible. I also don't like rulebooks that they're sort of formatted funkily. They're like, all right, so we're going to teach you first, before you set up the game, we're going to teach you the concepts of the game. And now let's talk about some general strategy. And now let's set up the game. And now here's an appendix for all the different tiles that you might encounter. And now here are the rules for the game. And so when you're trying to reference it, like you're flipping to where you feel like the answer for what you need should be. And it's just like completely on the opposite side of the rulebook. It's just sort of funky.
Are you saying less is more?
Less is more? Ish. I just feel like there needs to be some sort of federation of board game rulebooks that has like a certain way you should set it up. Sort of like MLA format, but for games. That's what we need.
I think, so what I found myself doing with games like Tapestry or, Arc Nova or stuff like this, because nowadays, you're right, you have your main rulebook, you have your appendix, you have your FAQs, you have your player aid, you have your solo rules. I've taken the ones that don't matter as much and I stick them on the very bottom of the box, and it's like, probably I don't need to touch those, right? And then I just leave out the ones that are most important. I
wish they differentiate that more, though. I always hate, you look at a rule book and you can kind of estimate how long it's going to take you to go through it or read through it. And then it's like the last third of it is the solo rules. And it's like, I don't care about the solo rules. Put that in a different book. I don't want it.
Or they put all three, like they put 3 languages within the same book, so you think it's huge. It's only a third of it.
I hate that.
Yeah.
Hey, Anna will appreciate Carnegie comes with a German rule book as well as English.
I saw that it was produced by Pegasus Spiel also, which is a German company. So
the fact that you brought it up indicated to me that it must be a German company.
Like, no, I saw it was made by Games Workshop or whatever. Okay, cool. Question, Cody. I'm trying to think back through your list of games, but how often do you encounter these pet peeves? Whether they're like issues, playing with people issues, or just like some of the other things you mentioned. Like how often are you
Yeah.
encountering this stuff?
I'll just go down the list. Out of print games I encounter constantly because I like 2/3 of the games that are on my priority list I just can't find. They're just not in print. So that's annoying. Bags, that happens all the time. There's always issues with bags. And now I love Stonemaier Games. They're a great company. They put out good stuff, but now they're doing these like really chintzy, like eco-friendly bags. It's like, you're still printing bags. I'm still going to throw these away. I would have kept the bags if they looked nice, and then I wouldn't be throwing them away and throwing that into the world. Like, just print nice bags.
Oh, that's funny.
Punch boards, that always happens anytime it's a new game, unless it's a really high quality punch board.
Yeah.
Corners of boxes ripping, like I said, super low, not very common. And confusing rule books, I'd say 1/3 of the time is maybe an issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. How about you?
I think most of mine don't happen too often. Like the expansion not fitting or having an issue happens occasionally. Expansions with different colored, whatever materials happens more often than I feel like it should. And because that's like a really big annoyance, Yeah, the rest don't happen that often, I feel like. So, yeah.
That's good. That's a good feeling.
Yeah. Okay, that's that, Cody.
Well,
that was a fun one. We'll definitely come back to it. I think maybe a year or something in the future. Come up with another list.
I think so.
Yeah,
maybe half a year.
Oh, okay.
I guess it depends how frequently we release these. I have a closing comment that's not related to anything that I feel like I need to clarify for one of our previous episodes.
Okay.
Where there was some confusion between Corey Knitska and Reiner Knizia.
Wait. They have a different last name, right?
Oh.
Konitschka.
Yeah, well,
or
I finally
something.
just realized that they are definitely written differently, and I think they're pronounced differently. Reiner is actually like Knizia.
Yes.
And then Corey is like Knitska or something.
It's like Koe.
It's spelled super differently. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a thing. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, we all knew we were wrong. Are you just like further trying to justify your reason, or I don't know?
I guess so. Just, revealing my own buffoonery. And remember, board games is an acceptable line item in your monthly budget.
Hello and welcome to the Tabletop Shop Podcast outro. It's the first time our outro has a real intro, Cody. What do you think of that?
It's the intro to the outro, and the outro now sounds like the intro. So we should just cut this and put this as the intro, and then the intro I did, let's use that as the outro. What do you think?
Cut.